All right, traders, happy Friday and welcome to, we'll make this a quick Friday video. It is the 11th and just wrapped up the trading week. We're going to look at this week's performance in a second and a little bit of strategy for next week, thoughts for next week and so forth and so on. But looks like S&P futures finished positive for the day. Is that right? Yeah, it looks like SPY was up 4 basis points. So we did touch green. Qs did not get there. They finished down, what, 35 basis points, so less than a 0.5% down. Small caps continue to hang in there. Both small and where's the mid cap? Where do I have the mid caps? So small and mid caps basically finished flat or unched. And so it's funny because this morning, you very rarely hear people in financial media say flat for the day or there's not much there. Oh, the market is down. It's down now, one out of this many days or so forth. We're basically flat for the day. There wasn't really a big move intraday, but always there will be more drama that happens or that you hear about when you turn on the TV. So what did we do? What did we do for? I always like to look at this because we did open up lower for the second day in a row, and a lot of sectors came back. And this is the percentage change from the open. You could see basically the averages. They all did about the same thing. Maybe the Qs underperformed from the opening print a little bit, but I have this sorted for the sectors. Yeah, what's interesting is what came back today. I like to see where that money is being put to work after the open. Semiconductors were up 1.5%. Now they didn't finish up that much. They were still amongst the best performing sectors. They finished up 80 basis points. I'm going to take a look at that sector in a minute. And I think that's important to look at. But the home builders continue to have strength. They've finished up from the open. Again, the utilities seem to be lagging a little bit. They seem to we are seeing some better performance in terms of riskier sectors. And I'll bring up what else? And this was kind of a mix. There just wasn't much going on in the FANG stocks, and I think unless you played Netflix off of those upgrades this morning, there really just wasn't much to do in terms of trading. So I want to talk about that for a second, and so let's talk about this week's performance first, and then I will talk about maybe doing a little bit too much or doing a little bit. Yeah, I'll get to that whole point in just a second. But for this week's performance, it was pretty strong. I've got the performance for the week. I guess I could look at this here on the. But it was a really strong week. Small caps were up 4.7% for the week. So risk was on throughout the week. The transports were up 4.3%. So if you're bullish, if you're positioned long, I should say, this was a really good week for you. Emerging markets were up 2.6%. The SPY itself was up 2.5%. But again, look at the outperformance in IWM and SPY. So really, really strong. And then the international markets were strong too because of the weaker dollar, right? The majority of international ETFs, you're essentially short the dollar. Very important to know that. So any of these names here that are in the for the international performance, which you can see Argentina was up 6.5%, Canada was 4.3%. Any of these ETFs, you're essentially short the dollar, right? Because they're holding a local basket of securities. And what that means is that if the dollar goes down, it's going to help. Let's say that Argentina, or let's say that the performance didn't move at all and the dollar decreases by 2% for the week, then basically you're going to be up 2%. And that's how that works for international ETFs. Very important to know that there's a currency component in there, not just what the local the local performance is there. So, and how that works sometimes negatively is if, let's say, you're in the Canada ETF and Canada goes up 2%, but their currency goes down 2%, then you're basically, the ETF will return zero back to you. Okay, so turning back to the U.S., I mean, oil, energy, crude was on, had a real nice bounce this week. And then you have some other groups situated in here. The home builders up 6.7%, biotech up 6.3%. I was listening to CNBC. They were talking about the housing numbers. And It's funny. I try not to criticize as much as possible, but I just don't like when people make predictions. The woman who was on, I'm not going to mention her name, but she goes, "Yeah, I don't see housing coming back anytime soon." And you don't have a crystal ball. You don't know that. Has it been down? Yes. But we see a whole bunch of things. Just like we saw the market go down in October, September and October, before any negative economics came out, price is always leading. So there's something going on here with the home builders. They do, she was just like, oh, it's a bounce from oversold conditions. It could be. It could be also that they've bottomed. It's too early to tell that. So, I don't like people who come out and say that they know something and they have no skin in the game and they could just make these statements. But anyway, you just don't know that. You kind of just have to follow the price. So that was amongst the. Sorry to go off on a tangent, but I do that from time to time. The semiconductors were up 6%. This is, something that if you're bullish, I think is also pretty good. The Chinese internets were up a lot. The Fang stocks were up a lot this week. So let's go into what underperformed. All the defensive type risk off areas. The gold miners were down 1%. Consumer staples, utilities, they underperformed. They were still up for the week, but they were down. And then the financials underperformed. So financials, are completely different. I could talk about the financials for 20 minutes. I'm not going to do that on this video, but there's a lot of things going on in the financials where I not a fan of really going long the financials other than for a short-term bounce. I think that they're more utilities nowadays than profit centers. But anyway, that's like I said, I'm not going to get too much into that. But basically, that's the performance. Also, healthcare underperformed a little bit versus biotech was up 6.3%. Interesting. Biotech up 6.3% and healthcare only up 2%. So again, depends on what names that are the drivers of this. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the charts. And yeah, S&P, and you kind of see this all over the place, right? People talking about overhead resistance. People are doing a ton of anticipating, in my opinion. I could basically just tell you how I trade. Uh, is I will, and I've learned this from experience where I've cut my winners too early. I've tried to catch a falling knife. These are all things my background that I try to learn to avoid. So everybody seems like they're trying to play a move next week down. Could we get a move down next week in the averages? Absolutely. But there's really nothing to tell me that in terms of the price action, right? That's a gut feeling, and that's trying to anticipate the next move. Now but I think there could be several scenarios that play out here, and I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm not going to try to predict what that's going to be. So, either we chop around all next week because it is earnings season, and I think it's a tougher time to trade during earnings season. We could fall back and we could retest this 2481 level if we look at SPY. Just to give you a level, because I know a lot of people look at SPY, so I'll do it this way. But we have a little bit further to go in that one. That would be 239. But so here's what I'm looking at, and I say this a lot in the trading room. I say this a lot on Twitter. I just basically watch the 5-period moving average, right? It is a super short-term moving average. It's only 5-day. I've got the 20 on here as well, and I've got the 50. What really helps me with following, because this whole move down, right? It didn't tell you at all to go in and start buying because price never got above. So you could have said, hey, I'm going to anticipate a turnaround here. Nope, didn't happen. Here, nope, didn't happen. Until now, trying to catch that exact day, I think is very, very difficult, right? I'm just not going to be able to do that personally. I'm not going to be able to catch the exact bottom and the exact top. So yeah, I mean, you kind of, unless you're day trading, which I'm sure we were day trading on this day, on the day after Christmas. But here's where the swing started. You had the false move here, but price is still above here. So I'm not going to say we'll see. I'm not going to say, I'm just going to basically say you kind of I will start to look to short things once we get below the 5 period moving average. And maybe that's Monday. Who knows? But if you start to look around, and I'll go over Qs, I'll go over IWM, and I'll go over a couple sector charts. But again, I mean, yes, there's overhead resistance, right? We've approached it here. But look at, so before I get to the sector charts, so IWM, it's kind of the same thing. We do have that top of value, which, I think this is a great place to take some targets. 145, 145.81, right? And the overall indices. This is not single stocks. This is the overall indices. So now when we get to look at the sectors, look at SMH. I mean, it did not close on the highs, but so here was the resistance. Here was the overhead resistance. Well, I mean, there was no major earth-shattering moment. It's gone through it. And we're now above. So, again, I think resistance, there'll be some resistance at the top of value. But, semis, I think, are leading. Small caps are leading. And sure, all it could take is one day for this to turn around. But I don't know why play that game of trying to figure out when you've got I think one of the leading indicators just went right through that resistance. So, so another thing, and I have this picture up too, right? So rather than trying to figure out what the next move is going to be, just kind of wait for a little bit of confirmation to come on. And it's one of my favorite movies, but this is what forgetting Sarah Marshall. Right? You're doing too much, do less. And I think traders, if I'm reading Twitter right, and there's a lot of great followers on Twitter, a lot of great traders on Twitter, but I see a lot of people trying to short things, and I don't know. I'm not necessarily ready to do that until I get some type of confirmation. Right? We were talking about a couple names today. So this is one sector chart. Financials, that would probably be on my list to short. I just think they're going to have trouble, but there's no trade there yet for me either. It's still above the short-term moving averages. Let's look at a couple other ones. XLY, consumer discretionary, had a bumpy week with a couple guide downs. There's nothing there there to short either. Price is not telling you that we've lost the upward swing. Do I think it's important to lighten up? If you've been playing a nice move, yeah, absolutely, and I've been doing that through the end of the week. XLK. Keep in mind, XLK technology is much different than it used to be. You can't really, in my opinion, and you could disagree with me here, but you can't really take a look at the technicals too far back because they've completely changed XLK. They took out a lot of XLK and made it into the XLC ETF, a lot of the components. Yeah, it's still called tech, but, you don't have, what's in this thing now? Right? So remember this happened in October. That was all that big volume with XLK and XLC. But Google's not in this anymore. Amazon was never in this. That's in consumer discretionary, but it's a different looking basket than what it was before. So XLK kind of looks similar. Let's look at just a few other sectors. I said this video was going to be 5 minutes. I guess I really didn't do a good job at managing those expectations. XLV is back to the 200-day moving average. What else? We could look at materials. A lot of these and we'll look at industrials. It looks like materials are up to the top of value resistance. One more, which I think is a very good group to watch. This one. It's not pure enterprise and application software because names like Activision are in here, Take-Two's in here. So there's some gaming stocks in here as well. But yeah, I think a lot of names are over the 200-day moving average and showing some really good strength. I took a small position today. This is a name that I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. Again, you can't put on every position, but Hubs, right? That's one. and I'm still in a couple other. I being cognizant of loading too much up in this group. I'm still in some Zen. I got out of NTNX early this week. It did a perfect nice swing here. It's still kind of consolidating. I think I got out on this day, one of these days this week. What else was I in? I was in Keys this week. This one's still managing to almost putting in a bull flag here. There's a couple other names. The cyber names look pretty interesting. Fortinet or Fortinet. I have an alert set at 7460, which is basically right up here. Also, cyber looks pretty good. The cyber names look pretty good. So right at that cusp of kind of going higher, look at the 50-day moving average and the 20-day moving average starting to move higher. Palo Alto is another name in this group that's had a nice week. So I think that there's some really good strength in some names. I even really like the Tesla chart. It's in value, but it's kind of riding this 50-day moving average, moving up. Right, we talked a lot. I put out a note on EEM. I think this is looking constructive. So it's tough to kind of look one by one at single names. Again, depending on what single names you're looking at, but it seems like there's still some decent opportunities that are setting up pretty nicely. So, and then the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the VIX, right? If you trade options, right, and right now I'm kind of trading a mix of options and stock. Anything where the implied volatility is too high or that I want to be comfortable in a trade for a while, I'm trading stock because this is going on, right? So even if you didn't trade too much today, some of and if you have option positions on, you're basically the premiums are going down, right? Because implied volatility is a component of option pricing. So when you go from a VIX, and we've basically gone in half here, we've gone from a 35 down, 35, 36 down to an 18 in the VIX. So what happens is your premium gets crushed. And that's why it's very difficult to just kind of sit in option positions. So for me, I've been trading a lot more stock because you don't have to worry about, you don't get hit on the volatility crush, right? So definitely like using a combination. I mean, if you're in and out of positions really quick day trading, then you're okay with this. Nvidia has been a nice trade. This just got going, and again, was just looking for a very short move. We talked about that version point of control that it was taken out. It actually went higher, so which can happen. We are giving a Monday webinar, by the way, on version point of controls, what they mean, how to use them in your trading, and so on and so forth. Let's see, where did this go? Oh, there it goes. Thinkorswim. But I was targeting this all week long. Was this 148 VPOC? So real nice move in this one. I think AMD made a nice move as well. But yeah, if you look at some of these names, it did not take out the version point of control. Interesting. But if you look at some of these names in the semi space, you could basically go long. And I know a lot of people like to trade AMD in options, but why not just go long versus the 200-day moving average? It's a $20 stock. See where it wants to go. You got some resistance at 21.26, and then the best of the bunch, I think, is Xilinx, really showing some nice strength. All right, so that's it. I think that's everything that I wanted to cover. I talked about the VIX, but yeah, I mean, my main message is, instead of trying to anticipate that next move, let it happen, and you can kind of go from there, right? Instead of always trying to predict and anticipate. I think there's more money lost in trying to play that game versus trying to be as neutral as possible. Yeah, I'll kind of leave it there. We'll leave it there. I want to keep the video under 20 minutes. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a great weekend and see you on Monday.